40 nights I paced the dust, a shadow in the heat, with 40 years of lies dragging heavy at my feet. I shouted at the silence, but the heavens stayed like stone. A man can't hear a whisper when he's built his God alone. The devil spoke in silver tongue, he promised me the rain, but God just kept on waiting in the middle of my pain. I carried every sin I loved like water in a sieve, running from the only life I didn't know how to live. I wasn't begging for a light to find my way, I was just looking for a reason to stay. 40 nights in the desert, and I finally hit the clay. Got my knees in the red dirt, with nothing left to say. Forgive me for the hollow crowns and every fire I fed. Forgive me for the living ghosts I carried to my bed. But tell me, Lord, just tell me, 'cause the sky is turning thin, was there anything worth saving in the skin I'm hiding in? I dodged the steeple's shadow, I burned the holy book, afraid to face the mirror or the long and steady look. But the road, it always ends where the pride begins to fail. At the bottom of the canyon, at the ending of the trail, I thought of every heart I broke to build my gilded cage, 1,000 wasted chapters on a stained and empty page. And when the wind began to howl before the break of dawn, I whispered to the emptiness I was wrong. Not looking for a miracle, not asking for the sun, just asking for the strength to face what I've done. 40 nights in the desert, and I finally hit the clay. Got my knees in the red dirt, with nothing left to say. Forgive me for the hollow crowns and every fire I fed. Forgive me for the living ghosts I carried to my bed. But tell me, Lord, just tell me, 'cause the sky is turning thin, was there anything worth saving in the skin I'm hiding in? I was the prodigal son with no home to return to, the man who sold eternity for a flame that's gonna burn through. I built my idols tall and watched them crumble into rust, just another king of nothing, kneeling in the dust. But on that 41st morning, in the gray and bitter cold, I didn't find the glory, I just found my soul. 40 nights in the desert, I earned every jagged scar. 40 nights in the silence, learning who you really are. Forgive the coward and the king, forgive the man I tried to be. If there's anything still holy, let it start right here in me. Just tell me, somebody tell me, when the story finally ends, was there something in this broken man worth remembering? Amen. King's empire with blood under my nails. Carved my name in the stone where the weak man fails. They promised a boy he'd never touch the sun, so I swallowed the fire until I was the only one. I wore the crown like a curse I was born to bear. Ruled the shadows, the silver, the cold midnight air. But nobody warns you when you're standing so tall that a throne is just a target painted on a wall. The higher the mountain, the thinner the breath, the closer the brother, the swifter the death. The price of the crown is the ghost in the hall, the silence that screams when you've conquered it all. It's the face in the glass that you no longer know. A king made of marble with nowhere to go. I bought every street with a piece of my soul, and I burned it all down just to feel in control. That's what scares me the most. We shared the same bread, the same dirt, the same name. He swore on his life, then he sold out the game. I saw the steel glimmering back in his eyes, the loyalty of Judas in a tailor-made disguise. He traded my secrets for a seat at the plate, sold 10 years of scars in a single foul day. I didn't scream traitor, I didn't even cry. I just watched the man I once called brother die. The higher you rise, the harder the strike. The man who knows your scars knows where to push the spike. The price of the crown is the ghost in the hall, the silence that screams when you've conquered it all. It's the face in the glass that you no longer know. A king made of marble with nowhere to go. I bought every street with a piece of my soul, and I burned it all down just to feel in control. She whispered of mercy, she whispered of home. I kissed her goodbye and I chose to stay alone. She walked through the frost of a January dawn and took the last light before the shutters went drawn. Too proud to be human, too broken to pray. I'm the master of everything with nothing to say. The price of the crown is the blood on the floor, the brother, the woman, the man I was before. It's sown in the world while you're locked from inside, with nowhere to run and no shadow to hide. I paid for this throne with the rest of my life, and I'm still paying. Forevermore. I stepped off the train in October, mud still caked on my leather. The town looked the same, but I was changed forever. They hung up the flags and they offered their hands, but they didn't see the ghost that followed from those foreign lands. I left a boy with a fire, I came back a hollow shell, trading my soul for a ticket out of that muddy hell. Now I lay in the silence that feels too small, waiting for the echoes of the thunder through the wall. The war didn't stay across the sea, it didn't say goodbye. It packed its bags in my shadow, and it waits for me to die. I came back from the trenches, but the war's still in my bones. It lives in every hallway, in the silence of my groans. I survived what should have killed me. I'm standing in the rain, but the battlefield moved inward, and I'm fighting it again. Yeah, I'm fighting it again. I burned every bridge to the man I used to be. Thought I'd build a new empire from the ashes of the free, but the ghost of the boy I was, he didn't wanna wait. He drowned in the craters, he was sealed behind the gate. The better men are sleeping under crosses in the dirt, while I'm walking through the city with a heart that's beyond hurt. Don't call me a hero, don't look me in the eye. You weren't there to count the bodies, you weren't there to hear them cry. You can't unsee the lightning, you can't unfeel the cold. There's no medal for the stories that can never be told. I came back from the trenches, but the war's still in my bones. It lives in every hallway, in the silence of my groans. I survived what should have killed me. I'm standing in the rain, but the battlefield moved inward, and I'm fighting it again. They taught me how to kill, they taught me how to lead, but nobody taught me how to stop the way my memories bleed. They gave me shiny copper for the darkness in my head. I trade 1,000 medals just to sleep among the dead. I burned the bridges down, thinking I could start anew, but the smoke just chokes the living, and it hides the only truth. Survival isn't glory, it's just a longer way to fall. And the war don't care if you came home at all. I came back from the trenches, but the war's under my skin. Every scar is just a map of the places where I've been. I survived the fire that killed me, twice as strong as me, but I'm still fighting in the shadows for the man I used to be. Still fighting, always fighting for the man I used to be. Born in the girly on a Tuesday, with hunger as my only kin. No map for the road, no father to show where the light begins. I wrote my own laws in calluses and sweat, and in cold-blooded shame. Swore to the dark I'd carve out a king from a body without a name. I climbed out the trenches inch by inch, with my teeth and a broken will, leaving a trail of red in the dirt, and the dirt is inside me still. Now I'm standing on marble, looking down at the world I've won, but I'm still that boy in the shadows, hiding away from the sun. Nobody hands you the keys to the gate. You break the lock or you die. And the man who builds from the nothing builds his own cage on high. I was born in the mud and I'll die in the silt, with a heart full of gold and a soul full of guilt. I came to this world with no manual in hand, so I wrote every page in the blood of the land. But when the clock strikes midnight and the lights start to dim, I look at the man in the mirror and I don't recognize him. I don't know who I am. I wear these fine suits like armor. I speak in the tongue of the great. I mirror the wolves at the table, and I decide everyone's fate. But underneath all this tailored wool, beneath all the polish and shine, there's a ghost from the gutter screaming, none of this glory is mine. I mastered the art of the cold stare, the man who's forgotten to feel, building a fortress of secrets so no one could see what was real. But when the silence surrounds me and the match starts to crack at the seams, the boy from the mud comes to visit and he ruins all of my dreams. The higher you climb from the gutter, the deeper the hollow inside. And the king that the world is cheering is a stranger you're forced to hide. I was born in the mud and I'll die in the silt, with a heart full of gold and a soul full of guilt. I came to this world with no manual in hand, so I wrote every page in the blood of the land. But when the clock strikes midnight and the lights start to dim, I look at the man in the mirror and I don't recognize him. They see the empire, they see the name carved in stone above the door. The man who never flinched, the shark who always wanted more. But they weren't there at 4 in the morning, when the whiskey lost its bite and the power felt like a shroud in the middle of the night. I searched for myself in the money, in the rooms, in the hollow applause, trying to find a meaning, trying to find a cause. But the truth is a bitter pill that I'm forced to swallow today. The mud never left me, it just learned how to wear expensive gray. I was born in the mud and I'll die in the silk, drinking the wine while I'm dreaming of milk. I built every road with these 2 bleeding hands, but I'm still a ghost in my own stolen lands. When the room goes silent and the shadows grow thin, I'm still just a boy with the mud on his skin. Secrets before we were even older. I gave him my silence. silence was the only gold we had. Stood back to back in the fire, through the good and through the bad. We built this fortress brick by brick before the roof was even set. But I never saw the shadow moving, I haven't seen it yet. That's the curse of trust in the man who knows your every move. He doesn't need to find your heart, he's already in the groove. It ain't the enemy that breaks your spirit or your spine. It's the hand you've held for 20 years, crossing over the line. A brother's blade cuts deeper there, a stranger's jagged knife. It knows exactly where you're soft, it knows the rhythm of your life. It slides between the ribs where you kept his name in stone, and leaves the man who called you family bleeding out alone. Yeah, bleeding out alone. She warned me with a whisper, said his eyes had turned to glass. I kissed her brow and told her that the winter clouds would pass. I let her walk away that morning, thought she'd find her way back home. Thought I had a lifetime left before I'd have to stand alone. But loyalty was auctioned off before the sun could even rise. Sold for a bag of silver in a mountain full of lies. Now the house is cold and empty and my name is thin as thread. And the man who stole my future is the one who shared my bread. I left better men than him, face down in foreign mud. Man who died for honor, not for selling out their blood. A brother's blade cuts deeper there, a stranger's jagged knife. It knows exactly where you're soft, it knows the rhythm of your life. It slides between the ribs where you kept his name in stone, and leaves the man who called you family bleeding out alone. I just write his name in ink inside the dead man's book. I survived the heavy cannons, I survived the gas and wire, just to come home to a brother who would set my soul on fire. There's 2 columns in my memory for the ones who stood or fell, and his name is at the bottom in the deepest pit of hell. Brother's blade cuts deepest in the silence of the night, when you're counting every shadow, waiting for the light. Broken promise, every door he locked inside. I survived the war in France, but not the brother who lied. Left me broken, left me bleeding by a brother and a blade. Carved my idols out with a granite, shaped their faces with my pride. With these 2 hands I built the gods that I could worship from inside. I fed the fire every morning, gave the flame my youth and breath, chasing a ghost of greatness that was just a slower kind of death. They rose up like cathedrals, casting shadows o'er the street, and the world it bowed in silence at my gold and silver feet, but nobody saw the architect on his knees within the dark, desperate to find a holy fire in a cold and dying spark. The cage is never made of iron, it's made of everything you want. And you don't know that you're a prisoner until the building's done. I reached the summit of the mountain, I touched the frozen sky, and found the throne was cold and empty, and I didn't wonder why. I built a version of myself for every room and every crowd, but the man I could have been got lost beneath the proud. Yeah, he never made it through the noise, he never made it at all. There's a version of me living in the life I didn't choose, a man with dirt beneath his nails and nothing left to lose. He didn't want the empire, he didn't need the heavy crown, he just loved a simple woman in a quiet, nameless town. But I chose the steep and jagged path, the hunger and the climb. I traded every honest hour for a hollow piece of time, and now I'm standing at the top, where the air is thin and gray, watching the man I should have been just drift and fade away. The higher that you build the walls, the louder when they crack, and there ain't no map in all the world to lead the phantom back. I reached the summit of the mountain, I touched the frozen sky, and found the throne was cold and empty, and I didn't wonder why. I built a version of myself for every room and every crowd, but the man I could have been got lost beneath the proud. There's a grief that has no funeral, no grave to lay the flower, the ghost of all the might have beens that died inside the tower. He sits quiet in the corner of every room I dominate, the only man I cannot kill, the only one I hate. I blame the idols for the cold, I blame the throne for being bare, but I'm the one who killed the boy and left the stranger there. I reached the top of everything and found it hollow to the bone. I built my gods with my own hands, and they left me all alone. There's a man I never got to be, buried deep beneath the crown, and the saddest kind of power is the kind that let him drown. Yeah, it let him drown in the empty of the throne. I treated pain like a religion, like a debt I had to pay, chasing every shadow just to keep the light at bay. I put the bottle to my spirit like a cold and silver gun, convinced that I was paying for the things I'd never done. I told myself the scars were medals, that the bleeding made me real, developing a taste for every wound I couldn't heal. I was judge and I was jury, I was the hammer and the stone, building up a graveyard and calling it a home. Nobody pushed me to the edge, I walked there on my own. King of a ruined kingdom, sitting on a hollow throne. I burned the greatest love I ever knew with my own steady hand. Watched the world turn into ash while I just chose to stand. She was the only grace I had, the only peace I couldn't keep. And I traded her for secrets and a ledge that's far too steep. But the men who gathered round to watch me crumble to the floor were the ones who gave me back the strength to walk right through the door. She saw men beneath the wreckage that I'd hidden from the light. She touched the jagged edges and she didn't take the flight. I repaid that holy mercy with a cold and calculated fire, burning down the only house that wasn't built on a wire. I told myself she'd be better off without my heavy name, but the truth is I was terrified of a life without the shame. I was a coward in a suit of mail, a ghost inside a cage, afraid of every chapter that didn't have a page of rage. But when they whispered I was finished, when they bet that I was dead, something iron in my marrow finally raised its heavy head. I burned the greatest love I ever knew with my own steady hand. Watched the world turn into ash while I just chose to stand. She was the only grace I had, the only peace I couldn't keep. And I traded her for secrets and a ledge that's far too steep. But the men who gathered around to watch me crumble to the floor were the ones who gave me back the strength to walk right through the door. When you break the only heart that ever tried to make you whole. And I did it like a soldier, with the plan and with the blade, dismantling the only ghost of heaven I had made. But every snare from every enemy became a brick inside my spine. Every doubt they cast upon me was a God-forsaken sign. I had to lose it all to see, I had to break to finally be. I made it through the wreckage of the war I waged inside. I'm standing in the ashes of the man who had to hide. I still carry what I burned, I still carry what I lost, but I'm standing like a giant now, and I've paid the final cost. I had to break, I had to bleed to become the man I was always meant to be. I found a list on a Tuesday, hidden in a dead man's coat. 12 names in lead and pencil, and a knot inside my throat. I read it twice in the shadows, then I read it once more slow. And the part of me that still could love just packed its bags to go. I survived the wire and the trenches, the hunger and the gun. done things in the name of living that undid me one by one. But nothing I saw in the crater, nothing forged in blood and lead, hit me harder than my brother's hand, mocking me for dead. You can kill to stay breathing, you can bleed for the cause, but there's no coming back from the moment you see who broke the laws. I saw my name on the list of the men who got sold, and the fire in my belly turned into January cold. I killed to survive out there, but surviving killed me too. And I carried both those corpses back to the town I once knew. Back to the town I once knew. I walked back through the valley with mud upon my name. The houses looked like memories, but nothing felt the same. The people stepped back slowly like they recognized the ghost of the man who burned their world down when they needed him the most. I stood at every doorstep, I knocked on every frame. I didn't ask for mercy, I just whispered every name. I'm here to count the ashes, I'm here to pay the cost for the things I broke to stay alive, for everything you lost. There's a difference between penance and the hope to be absolved. Some debts don't get forgiven, they just get lived until they're solved. I saw my name on the list of the men who got sold, and I walked through every consequence out in the bitter cold. I killed to survive out there, and surviving killed me slow. And I came back to the ruins of the life I used to know. Carry the ones you put in the ground, and the ones you cannot bury. The ones in the ground are sleeping, they're finished with the game. But the ones in the mirror, they're still screaming out your name. I made my choices in the darkness, I made them in the fear, and I live with every echo that brought me back to hear the list days in my pocket, folding near my heart to remind me of the man I was when I tore the world apart. I saw my name on the list, and I didn't turn to run. I stood in every shadow beneath the black and dying sun. I killed and I came back, I faced what that means. I'm the king of all the ruins, I'm the ghost inside the scenes. Carried what I couldn't, buried what remained, and I never once forgot my own name. I was the king of every corner, from the river to the blinding light. Every shadow in this city knew my heavy step by sight. I didn't need a crown of silver, I wore respect just like a skin. Nobody walked these cobblestones without paying for their sin. I kept the secrets of 100 men, kept my own head high and bowed to absolutely nothing. nothing and to no one. That was my law before the crowd. But the same cobblestones that make you sovereign, that lift you to the sky, have the longest memory of all, and they're waiting for you to die. Every kingdom has its winter, every throne has got a crack, and the city that gave you everything will one day want it back. I was the king of these ashes before they were ashes at all. I held the whole world in my fingers before I watched the empire fall. I walked through the valley of shadow, and I walked it completely alone. No God beside me in the darkness, just the echo of a frozen throne. Just the echo of a throne. He sat across my heavy table with a smile I should have read, drinking the whiskey that I poured him while he numbered all the dead. I kept his darkest choices hidden, like a brother keeps a sacred vow. But he took every piece of my life and he sold it then and now. I didn't scream when the glass shattered, I didn't make a single sound. I just walked back through my kingdom and watched it burn into the ground. The way a man can feel the winter before the first frost drops, the way a king can feel the blade right before the music stops. I walked a valley without a lantern, without a hand to hold in the dark, just me and every choice I made, blowing out the final spark. I was the king of these ashes before they were ashes at all. I held the whole world in my fingers before I watched the empire fall. I walked through the valley of shadow, and I walked it completely alone. No God beside me in the darkness, just the echo of a frozen throne. The devil spoke a simple language. He didn't dress it up in white. He said, I'll give you every street in exchange for just one night. And I said, what's a single night when you got empires left to run? But he smiled because he knew that one night had already begun. I walked straight through that valley with no one by my side, no God to guide my footsteps, no shadow left to hide, just the weight of what I traded, just the silence of the soul, the king of absolutely nothing, standing naked in the cold. I was the king of these ashes, and the ashes were mine to keep. I ruled the bloody daylight, and I paid for it in my sleep. I walked through every shadow that a man like me creates, without a single brother, just me and my mistakes, just me and my mistakes. King of ashes, king of nothing, king of everything too late. She left on a morning in January, when the sky was a thin sheet of gray. She didn't slam the heavy oak door, she just quietly melted away. Left the key on the marble counter, left the frost on the window pane, and opened the lock to the winter, and let in the freezing rain. I stood in the kitchen for hours, watching the coffee go black and dead, staring at the silk scarf she forgot, and the books that she left unread. The house was an empire of shadows, a fortress I built with my pride. But she took the last spark of the fire when she stepped outside. There's a silence that follows a woman when she walks out into the street, and the loudest room full of people is just a desert beneath your feet. She left in the January cold, and the winter forgot how to leave. I learned to wear it like a second coat, a ritual hidden in my sleep. Surrounded by money and music, surrounded by wolves at the play, but completely alone in the kingdom. Since the morning she drifted away. Since the morning she drifted away. I sat at the tables of power, I wore the sharp smile and the stone, answering every how are you with a lie that I managed alone. But the rooms were just hollow cathedrals, even when filled to the brim, because the only voice that could save me was never coming back in. I poured the brown liquor till midnight, trying to drown out the ghost, but the bottle just mirrors the damage of the things that you wanted the most. Until I looked at the glass in the darkness and set the damn thing on the floor, and whispered to no one in silence, I won't bleed for this ghost anymore. There's a line between carrying sorrow for the love that you had to lose, and making a home in the wreckage just because it's the path that you choose. She left in the January cold, and the winter forgot how to leave. I learned to wear it like a second coat, a ritual hidden in my sleep. Surrounded by money and music, surrounded by wolves at the play, but completely alone in the kingdom. Since the morning she drifted away. I don't blame her for packing her bags. Some birds are meant for the cage, and I wasn't built for the sunlight, I was built for the mud and the rage. She deserved a man who was whole, not a king who was hollow and torn. And I loved her enough to let go of the shadow where she was born. But there's still a man in this leather who deserves to find his own way out of these January mornings into the promise of May. I owe it to the boy that I was before I learned how to freeze, to stop drowning inside of her absence and get up off my knees. She left in the January January cold. Beyond the January cold. Nobody handed me a map when I hit this jagged ground. No instructions in the cradle, just the silence and the sound. I learned to trade by breaking things and breaking them again. I wrote the laws by shattering them and dancing with the pain. My manual was written in the margins of my greed, in the back of every barroom, in the garden of the weed, in the faces of the brothers that I used to climb the wall, in the mirror every morning that told me I was tall. You can forge a man from lightning, you can build him out of fire, but the king you make in hunger isn't someone you'll admire. When the shouting finally stops and the cold comes for you, I came into this world with empty hands and a hollow aching chest, and I filled them up with everything and failed the only test. I bet the house and won the world, but I lost the thing that counts. I traded my living soul for the silver in amounts, and the man who finally understood me was the man inside this skin. But I waited for the midnight hour to let the bastard in. Too late to change the story, too late to let him in. Oh, I won the golden tables and I won the iron name, and somewhere in the winning I forgot the reason why I came. The boy, he started hungry with a fever in his soul. He just wanted to be someone, he just wanted to be whole. But I traded him for shadows, traded mornings for the climb, traded everything that mattered for a piece of stolen time. And the punchline of the story, the blade that cuts the most, is I didn't even notice I become my own damn ghost. In my own house, in my own name. The man who knew me best was the one I wouldn't let speak. He sat quiet in the corner while I preyed upon the weak. I came into this world with empty hands and a hollow aching chest, and I filled them up with everything and failed the only test. I bet the house and won the world, but I lost the thing that counts. I traded in my living soul for the silver in the mountains, and the man who finally understood me was the man inside this skin. But I waited for the midnight hour to let the bastard in. I used to think that knowing yourself was for the soft and for the blind, something for the quiet ones, for the ones we leave behind. Real men don't look inward was the gospel that I led, but real men end up talking to the voices in their head at 4 in the morning when the empire's dark and still. And the man you built for daylight has finally had his fill. I found him there in silence, the version left behind, the one who asked for nothing but a little peace of mind. Just two versions of the same man, one of pride and one of tears. I wrote my own manual in blood, and I followed every word. I built the life I swore I wanted, and I got it, every word. But the man who understood me was the one I never freed, the one who sat in silence while I chased what I didn't need. Too late, maybe, but I'm living sign my name in confidence on lines I didn't read, thinking I could reap the harvest without paying for the seed. I thought I understood the game, thought I could walk away, but every pact has interest, and the interest compounds today. The men who held the paper never rushed me at the start. They smiled across the table like they didn't hold my heart. They knew that I'd come crawling when the winter turned to gray, to find out what the fine print meant on collection day. The devil doesn't hurry, he's got nothing but the time. He lets you build the empire before he comes to claim what's mine. I signed in blood I didn't know was blood, sold what I didn't know I could. I traded the eternal for a season and a name, and when the season ended, nothing stayed the same. The debts are paid in full, the ledger's clean and cold, and I'm just a hollow king with a soul already sold. I kept his secrets like a vault, a man of iron will, never spoke a single word through fire, gas or steel. But when the shadows gathered and I needed him to stand, I found my name already sold to another heavy hand. He took 10 years of silence, took the loyalty and trust, and traded it for silver, turned my empire into dust. He sold my secrets cheap to men who didn't know my worth. That's the signature of a Judas, he sells out from the birth. I traded what was permanent for something built on sand, shaking hands with darkness in a ghost-forsaken land. I signed in blood I didn't know was blood, sold what I didn't know I could. I traded the eternal for a season and a name, and when the season ended, nothing stayed the same. Kind of fool who thinks he's smarter than the trade, who walks into the furnace ignoring how the fire's made. I was that particular fool, in every room my own, thinking pacts were just my tools, not chains around the bone. I traded the forever for a temporary crown, and didn't hear the iron door lock shut as I sat down, until the season ended, until the last card fell, until I looked around and saw I built my own damn hell. A hell that looked like winning for a season, for a day alive, that wore my tailored suit and smiled my youth away. And when the air cleared out at last, I realized I was broke. Not in silver, not in power, but in everything that lasts. I was emptied by the promises, hollowed by the past, paid in full, paid in blood, of everything I was. I kept her favorite record stacked on a shelf I never touched. The song she used to play at dawn before the world became too much. a monument of vinyl to the ghost of who she used to be. She left 1,000 melodies, but not a single one for me. And I failed my father long ago, before his hair had turned to stone. I traded every word he said for a jagged road away from home. Thought I'd make him proud from a distance, thought I had a piece of time. But years move faster than the blood when you're busy with the climb. The words we mean to say to fathers get heavier with the cold, and the man who needs to hear them most is gone before they're told. I carried all the weight of years in the silence of my name, kept her songs, kept his memory, but couldn't stop the shame. And the world had put me on my knees until I understood the play, that kneeling in the red dirt was the only honest way to pray. I stood beside his quiet bed, 3 decades overdue, with a pocket full of broken years and nothing I could do. I opened up my mouth to speak, but decades blocked the track. I whispered, Father, I am sorry for the nights I didn't come back. He looked at me with fading eyes, no anger in his head. He said, I always knew you'd wonder, boy, and that was all he said. That mercy hit me harder than any fist or iron blade, forgiving me for every single ghost that my ambition made. No miracle can clean the path or make the crooked straight. You only get to face the truth when it's beautifully too late. I carried all the weight of years in the silence of my name, kept her songs, kept his memory, but couldn't stop the shame. And the world had put me on my knees until I understood the play, that kneeling in the red dirt was the only honest way to pray. Some men carry their failings like a dark and private crown, too proud to look into the mirror, too heavy to sit down. I was one of those wolves for longer than I'll ever own, until my knees hit the floor and I finally came home. I have no songs of my own to leave behind when I'm gone, just a shadow of my father holding up the dawn. I carried all the weight of years, but I lay it down today at the grave of every person that I failed along the way. The world put me on my knees, and I'm staying in the dust, 'cause kneeling before what you've broken is the only thing to trust. To begin the mend, the weight of years. language no one else can read. Every mark a different winter, every line a different bleeding need. This one here above the collarbone, the year I learned too well that a man can smile and shake your hand while sending you to hell. The war outside had borders, had an enemy you could see and fight. But the war that followed after just waits for you at night. It lives inside the rib cage, it moves beneath the bone, a battlefield that follows you when you think you're all alone. The cannons all inquire when they sign the final page, but nobody signed the paper for the soldier in this cage. Every scar's a chapter in a book I wrote in red. Every battle that I survived outside left another one ahead. Inside the walls, inside the chest of the running man who fled, spent 4 decades chasing distance from the ghost inside his head. But you can't outrun what you carried from the start. Every time I tried to settle down, every time I tried to stay, something vicious from the inside made me pack and walk away. I called it freedom, called it hunger, called it how a strong man lives. But I was running from a shadow that takes more than it gives. Decades spent in motion just to avoid the standing still, until the morning that my heavy legs just wouldn't climb the hill. I sat down in the mud with absolutely nowhere left to flee, and the phantom I've been running from sat down next to me. It wasn't steel, it wasn't fire, it wasn't dark or mean. It was just the boy I used to be, begging to be seen. Every scar's a chapter in a book I wrote in red. Every battle that I survived outside left another one ahead. Inside the walls, inside the chest of the running man who fled, spent 4 decades chasing distance from the ghost inside his head. Thinking I could leave the boy behind and forget the win again. But in the silence of that hill, when the running had to stop, I looked into his lonely eyes and let the armor drop. He didn't want the empire, didn't care about the crown. He just wanted me to listen before they put us in the ground. Every scar's a chapter left the house just like the prodigal, with fire in my chest, swearing I didn't need a single soul. I'd prove it to the rest. I built my empire out of hunger, wore my solitude like steel, feeding every vicious appetite until I forgot how to feel. But when the last coin hit the gutter and the final door went closed, I turned back toward the bridges that my own ambition froze. The biblical boy found a father running down to clear his track, but I found an empty gravel road and the winter staring back. There's no feast inside the hallway, no arms spread wide and high, just the silence of a man who's laid beneath a dark and heavy sky. Without the welcome, the sun without the gate, carrying every sin I gathered all the way back to too late. I bent my knees for the first time on a road with no one there, and realized the thing I call my backbone was just pride dressed up as prayer. Pride dressed up as prayer. I never knelt before a living man. I wore that like a crown, believing that a man who bends his knee is already halfway down. But the love I was too proud to hold, the trust I turned to ghost, were the only holy things I had and the things I needed most. I challenged every hand that reached, every voice that tried to save, convinced that being made of iron meant that I was being brave. Now I'm standing at the threshold with my pockets full of dust, and a house that won't forgive me for breaking all its trust. The man who never kneels for love, who never begs for grace, is the loneliest king in Christendom, with no one left to face. I am the prodigal without the welcome, the son without the gate, carrying every sin I gathered all the way back to too late. I bent my knees for the first time on a road with no one there, and realized the thing I call my backbone was just pride dressed up as prayer. I built my life on not needing, on pushing everyone away, making women who love me feel like December in the middle of May. Needing felt like surrender, so I chose to stand tall and free, and I came back to absolutely nothing, because I saw the winter breeze. A man who gives nothing gets back exactly what he earned, just a cold, empty porch and a lesson painfully learned. I am the prodigal who brought in the world before the final bed, too proud for any welcome, too broken to make amends. But I'm on my knees this morning on this cold and frozen track, asking nothing from the silence the ember shielded in the hollow of my palm. Through the coldest winter on record, keeping frozen winters calm. I didn't curse the darkness, didn't rage against the ground. I just held the last spark carefully and didn't let it drown. She came through like a season that was never meant to last. Loved me like a woman who was always moving past. The kind of love that visits but was never built to stay. And I loved her like a lighthouse loves a ship that sails away. I held the fire for both of us through every frozen night. And she was gone before the dawn could prove I held it right. I survived the longest winter with the smallest flame I had. I loved a ghost who couldn't stay, and it nearly drove me mad. I stayed loyal to the brotherhood when no man stayed for me. And I'm standing in the ashes of a code they couldn't see, and nobody returned but me. I kept the word I gave them when all other words were cheap. Stood beside the man I chose through every valley steep. But when the road forked at the end beneath the heavy sky, every man I called a brother chose to wave his own goodbye. I don't say this out of bitterness, I stated like a fact, like gravity or winter storms, like things that don't go back. I was loyal to a fault line that ran straight through every man, and I stood above the fracture till there was nowhere left to stand. The smallest flame burns longest when the hands refuse to fold, and the loneliest kind of honor is the kind that's never told. I survived the longest winter with the smallest flame I had. I loved a ghost who couldn't stay, and it nearly drove me mad. I stayed loyal to the brotherhood when no man stayed for me. And I'm standing in the ashes of a code they couldn't see. Steady man, when stories get retold, the one who held the middle ground when everything went cold. Not the hero with the glory, not the villain with the name, just the shadow in the corner with the smallest, oldest flame. She couldn't stay, I know it. The boys ran, I agree. They walked away from the only truth they'll never find or see. I survived the bitter winter with nothing but the will to burn. I love without condition and got nothing in return. I held the line for every man who couldn't hold it back, and I'm still here in the silence on the same unbroken track. Still burning, still standing, the last man at the flame. I climbed so high the air got thin, and the view stopped meaning much. I built the face that every room required and wore it like a crutch. A different mask for every door, a different name for every play. And somewhere in the changing, I threw the original man away. I looked into the glass tonight on a midnight without a name, and the stranger looking back at me didn't look the way he came. He left the cradle with a fire, with a question and a heart. But somewhere in the performance, he was torn completely apart. You spend your life becoming what the world needs you to be, until the morning you look up and there's no one left to see. The mirror shows a stranger in the skin I thought I owned. The man who played 1,000 roles and ended up alone, with no one left to perform for. In the silence of the climb, I've been everyone they needed, and I've never once been mine. Yeah, never once been mine. I was the ruthless one in business, the fearless one for friends, the iron pillar for the family, the king who never bends. I wore each role so heavily that the seams began to fuse, and I couldn't find the boy inside beneath the clothes I used. No one gave me absolution, no one came to clear the slate. The pardons that I waited for were beautiful and late. So I stood before the glass tonight and I spoke into the dark, to the stranger in the mirror holding up the final spark. The hardest words I ever said weren't said to any man. They were spoken to the reflection that I barely understand. The mirror shows a stranger in the skin I thought I owned. The man who played 1,000 roles and ended up alone, with no one left to perform for. In the silence of the climb, I've been everyone they needed, and I've never once been mine. Strength to those who need it, gave my calm into the storm, gave my vision to the blind ones, kept the frozen house so warm. I gave so much of everything that giving became the rule, just a ghost inside a castle playing the master and the fool. So I looked into his lonely eyes and I said, I see you now, I'm sorry that I left you out beneath the winter bough. Forgive you for the mask we wore, for the roads we had to find. I forgive us for the decades that we left so far behind. The mirror shows a man now that I'm learning how to claim. Not the soldier, not the tyrant, not the wolf who wore the name. I am done becoming shadow for the wolves inside the wood, just a man before the mirror finally slowly understood. Finally free, finally home, at the top of the climb. took the throne before it was offered. Didn't wait for the crown to come down. I reached up and seized what I wanted and wore it through every cold town. They told me to wait for my season, said patience was part of the game, but patience is for men with a safety net. And I had no choice but the flame. Now the chains that I broke to get to this room, the iron I left on the floor, were lighter than what I found waiting behind this heavy oak door. It sits on these shoulders like lead. It poisons the blood in my bone. This crown wasn't meant for my head. On this stolen seed of stone, the throne that you take before it is given will never quite fit your size. And the crown that you stole from the altar just places the frost in your eyes. The throne I stole weighs more than the chains I broke to get here. And the men who swore their allegiance run when the skies aren't clear. Some wolves only stay while you're winning. Some friends only follow the sun. And she taught me how to love right, and I showed her why she shouldn't have begun. Yeah. Shouldn't have begun. He stood by my side through the taking, said he'd bleed till the chapter was done. But convenience was his only compass, and he followed it out to the run. When the gold on the seat started fading and the weight began to display, he was first to find a good reason and the last to look my way. He'd already sold out my secrets to the sharks on the other dark side, trading 10 years of my silence for a piece of his cheap, hollow pride. I saw it in the freeze of his shadow, in the way he whispered my name. Just a fraction less of conviction than the day we started the game. Some men are loyal to the winner, some men are loyal to the gain, and the ones who leave when it freezes show you who they were in the rain. The throne I stole weighs more than the chains I broke to get here. And the men who swore their allegiance run when the skies aren't clear. Some wolves only stay while you're winning. Some friends only follow the sun. And she taught me how to love right, then I showed her why she shouldn't have begun. There's a weight that comes with taking what was never yours to hold. It doesn't show in the daylight, but it finds you at 3 a.m. in the cold. She tried to build a home in the shadows of my heavy, ruined name, arranging her softness around me like love could survive in the flame. But I gave her only the winter, gave her sorrow dressed up as steel. And the men who swore on the dagger were just waiting to see how I'd kneel. The stolen throne was always just a longer way of going down. The throne I stole weighs everything. It weighs the chains times 10. It weighs the never deserved a light, carrying it all alone. Stranger in this body for the better part of years, renting out the space inside to my habits and my fears. The devil spoke so clear at dawn, promised fast and promised clean, while God was somewhere quieter, a place I hadn't been. I look for chasing temporary comfort in the things designed to pass, but the silence I was running from was where the truth was bound, in the stillness of a lonely room where I refused to be found. The devil promises on Monday, but the payment is your soul, and a man who runs too fast will never find the way to be whole. At the end of every highway, at the top of every play, at the bottom of the bottle, inside this battered man, I just wanna know one thing before the dark swallows the light. Was there something in this broken life worth remembering tonight? Yeah, worth the fire and the fight. Decades performing for a crowd without a name, wearing 20 different faces till I forgot the way I came. Before the world had taught me that the soft things must be killed, before the iron fortress of my empire was fulfilled, I took the devil's shortcut every time the shadows grew, trading everything that mattered for a power never true, until the road ran out of miles and the music had to stop, and I had to face the wreckage at the very lonely top. The bottle never held the peace, the crown just brought the cold, and the shortcuts only leave you with a spirit turned to old. At the end of every highway, at the top of every play, at the bottom of the bottle, inside this battered man, I just wanna know one thing before the dark swallows the light. Was there something in this broken life worth remembering tonight? I think of every man I've been along this crooked track, the boy who started hungry, the soldier who came back, the king upon a stolen throne, the brother who was sold, the prodigal who found the porch so empty and so cold. I hit the floor 1,000 times, my knees in the red clay, but I got back up because the breath demanded one more day. I am still here in the mirror, I'm a man who stood and tried, and maybe that's the only answer to the question of this life. At the end of all the madness, it was worth remembering the hollow and the holy, the beggar and the king. Every scar and every silence, every triumph, every fall, every bottle, every prayer, every nothing after all. The devil spoke the silence like a language in the only school I knew. The streets don't teach you poetry, they teach you how to bruise. Got a degree in pain, got a doctorate in standing through the storm. Using fists to keep the shadow out and keep the body warm. But the thing about a weapon that you carry way too long is it starts to build a cage around the place where you were strong. The armor that had saved me from the gutter and the knife became the iron prison that was choking out my life. The cage I built for safety had no door from the inside, and the violence was a shadow where the boy could only hide. They hit me hard enough to find the floor beneath my feet, and the dirt became the starting point of everything I'd meet. I raised my dirty hands up to the heavy open sky, and something in the universe refused to let me die. Yeah, dirty hands, open sky, and still alive. Still alive. I didn't clean my fingers before I started to pray. There wasn't time for water at the ending of the day. I was on my knees already in the middle of the muck, whispering to the blackness after everything went struck. I didn't ask for lightning, just a reason not to freeze. A broken piece of mercy for a sinner on his knees. The blows that broke the pattern were the ones that broke the chain, and the ground became the altar that was catching all the rain. There's a theology for clean men in their Sunday suits and grace, but there's another gospel for the blood upon my face. They hit me hard enough to find the floor beneath my feet, and the dirt became the starting point of everything I meet. I raise my dirty hands up to the heavy open sky, and something in the universe refused to let me die. We didn't use the proper words, we didn't pay the price to sit among the chosen ones inside their paradise. We bled our way to God because it's all we had to give. Two bleeding hands from the gutter just begging for a way to live. And the only miracle I know inside this broken wood is that the silence answered back and said that I was good. Not with thunder, not with fire, not with gold upon the shelf, just given one more night to fight.